This is a project about one of the biggest volcanic explosions ever. Mount St. Helens erupted on May 18th, 1980. It was a tragedy to people who lived around there. There were lots of bad effects to this mountain. Mount St. Helens is an active mountain in Washington, USA. The famous eruption was on May 18, 1980. The eruption killed 57 people and caused a lot of damage. Mount St. Helens was a tragic eruption. Animals were endangered by the eruption, especially the elk, like you can see in the picture. Some of them were running from the eruption. Like humans, they were trying to survive by the eruption, like squirrels, for example. There were buildings that were in the eruption. The buildings were demolished into rubble. They were seriously damaged. Also, people's houses were demolished, which made the people sad. But the most important thing was local citizen Harry Truman and the Spirit Lake Lodge. He refused to go and leave his lodge, so he died. The lodge was covered in a landslide along with a pyroclastic flow, and the lake got wiped out. Also, some of the landscape was torn up by the eruption. The landscape was ruined and trees were broken, laying on the ground. Since a lot of trees and plants died, it took a while to clean it up. But the earthquake is an important part too. An earthquake caused the eruption of Mount St. Helens. The earthquake was a 4.2, but that still caused the eruption. There were also a lot of damage. There was damage because Mount St. Helens released a pyroclastic flow. Buildings were demolished, and cars were broken. Since buildings were falling down, people were affected. There was also an ash cloud sent out by Mount St. Helens. There was an ash cloud that went out by the eruption, and people were trying not to breathe the bad ash. There were a lot of deaths. There were 57 deaths by Mount St. Helens. People who knew people who died from the eruption were weeping. The people were trying to evacuate, while 57 of them sadly died by either being burned to death or breathing too much ash. They had sirens that went off when the eruption was happening. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. The credits are myself, Evernote, the internet, and Mr. Closet. In the end, we can all now appreciate on how big Mount St. Helens was and how it affected us. Thanks again for watching.